So my question to you, Matt, is the mainstream media dead? Is there a role for alternative media? And how do we make alternative media the alternative to mainstream media? What are the checks and balances? What do we do about quality control? You're the editor of the Grayzone. You've come under a lot of criticism for your approach, but you've also come under a lot of praise for your success. So the floor is yours, sir. How does alternative media help us stop a nuclear war?
Yeah, thank you. You said my remarks would be unpredictable, and I didn't really prepare, so I don't know exactly what I'm going to say. I'm going to kind of freestyle, but before I do, I think I came up with one solution where Margaret's asking about the way forward. I think if we could just appoint Benjamin Netanyahu as CEO of Kaiser Permanente, we might start seeing some progress in the world. Certainly celebrations would go global.
Well, this video just got kicked off of YouTube, but that's okay.
Yeah, you just got demonetized. We're streaming. We just got demonetized. What I'm just, thinking of career possible opportunities for him after his coalition with various Nazis collapses. So the media, yes, mainstream media is collapsing before our eyes. Look at the view count, the view counts that they get on MSNBC's YouTube channel or their Nielsen ratings. Just how many people are watching Ari Melber, my former colleague at The Nation magazine. It's about 30 to 40,000 people who have the TV on in the background who are 75 and older. And no offense, I mean, I see most of the people here older. That's the way it always is at dissident events. I say never trust anyone under 30. But we are actually at the Grayzone, our live streams get more viewers than MSNBC on like daytime and MSNBC, where they're like, and it's just it's a sign of the time. Scott Ritter kills us. I mean, when Scott speaks, people listen. People want to hear us and Scott more than they want to see four woke pro-war professors with funny glasses on an MSNBC panel. I mean, it's just the way it is. And it was not always this way. I mean, it's technology, but it's also because of the nature of the empire today, the nature of corporate mainstream media, where we are at this point in history, and the rising consciousness in the public, especially since October 7th, which has really galvanized activism among younger people. And just, I have some reflections about that. I wasn't setting out to be some alternative media guy. I wanted to be like maybe a MSNBC host, with Chris Hayes. I used to work with Chris Hayes, and Rachel Maddow impersonator at The Nation. I knew him, but he just kept on the straight path with the Democratic Party wherever they went. He wasn't seeking the truth. I started out, just hitting the Republicans during the Bush era. And I was thinking, if we could just get the neocons out and get Bush out, then everything will be fine and the war will end and the wars will end. I wasn't really seeing things quite clearly enough during the Bush era. It took Obama to kind of wake me up. It also took Palestine to wake me up. So after I wrote a best-selling book called Republican Gomorrah, which is about the political psychology of the Republican Party under Bush, which was really controlled by the Christian right, actually a different Republican Party than Trump's Republican Party. They weren't having as much sex as Trump's Republican Party is. I mean, they got some freaky characters in the MAGA base right now. They were like, pious. I got on Terry Gross on NPR. She booked me. She's like, Max Blumenthal, you've been going to a lot of tea parties. And I just, gave her the rap. Within like seconds, my book was in the top 10 on Amazon. I was beating all the AstroTurf bulk bought right-wing authors, Glenn Beck and Michelle Malkin. And so I had a bestseller. So I went back to my publisher and I was like, you know what? I want to do a book on what the real Israel is that Americans don't know. And they had to say yes, because they didn't expect me to do this well. That book was published by Nation Books through the Nation magazine. It was called Goliath, Life and Loathing in Greater Israel. I think that has stood the test of time. If anything, I went too soft on Israel with that one. That came out in 2013. And when that book came out, first of all, it was, when many people who had supported Obama started to realize that they had been potentially bamboozled, even hoodwinked. And so there was a good audience for it. But there was enormous resistance at The Nation magazine and within the progressive media that I thought was going to be so supportive, because the progressive media just supported the Democratic Party. And there was a guy who is completely irrelevant now, who had a lot of power at The Nation magazine, Eric Alterman, who wrote 13 attack pieces on me inside the pages of The Nation for besmirching the great reputation of Israel. By the end, he was defending Netanyahu as a liberal. And, I saw him at the airport a few years later, like customs, and I walked up to him. I was like, thank you for helping sell my book. I couldn't have done it without you. He was shaking. He didn't know what to say. Like 2 years ago or 3 years ago, Eric Alterman wrote a book about how fascist Israel is. It's like a boring version of my book. And that's what just keeps happening again and again. So I was pushed out of The Nation, though, because of that. It just got too uncomfortable for them. Then the whole apparatus of progressive media that started during the Bush era, Truth Dig, Alternet, all these publications that I was writing for started to collapse. And I was forced into alternative media simply because I wanted to tell the truth. And it wasn't going to be possible within the progressive base of the Democratic Party anymore. And so I started this thing called the Grayzone. And really, it was started as just a WordPress site that has really found its voice because so many people feel the same way we do. It's a nonpartisan site. And we try to put forward the original investigative reporting that we think a decent media should do. We really found our voice, I think, when I published my investigative series on the Syrian white helmets. It was one of the biggest pro-war scams and psyops that I'd ever seen in my life, were this group that was basically the MASH unit for the Syrian branch of al-Qaeda, which was started by a British military intelligence agent named James Le Mesurier, who fell off a balcony after being exposed for stealing tons of donor money from Western governments, funded by USAID, which a total intelligence operation, cooking up chemical attack events and various and all sorts of atrocities to convince the Western public that we needed to support a regime change war on Syria and that the US Air Force should be al-Qaeda's Air Force. This group needed to be exposed, and no one had touched it except for journalists like Vanessa Beeley and others who are in alternative media, but were just constantly being denounced as Assadists. And I think we helped move the reality of the white helmets. We forced more of the public to grapple with that reality. Then we started to find more of a voice, joining forces with Aaron Mate to challenge the Russiagate deception, which has been fully discredited because so few people on the left understood that this was not just about humiliating Trump with PP tapes. It was about paving the path for the war that we've been discussing here today and grooming the Democratic Party's previously anti-war base as fanatical neocons who want to join forces with the Cheneys, which all happened. But Aaron became like the buzzsaw. I mean, I couldn't keep track of all these characters. Gortman and Bleeker had a meeting and they were actually, Konstantin Kalimnik was actually got a contract from USAID. He wasn't a Russian agent. Aaron kept track of it. He was hammering it again and again and again, and actually became the only journalist to interview Konstantin Kalimnik within US media about who he really was. This was the guy who was said to be like the final piece in the puzzle connecting Russia to Trump. Could go on and on and on. But October 7th happened, and everything felt like it was coming full circle from Goliath. And we had been challenging the proxy war in Ukraine, explaining why this really happened, how it was provoked, how it was actually, we were being told, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Russia's unprovoked invasion of Ukraine. That was part of the talking points. And what we set ourselves to the task was to show how this was the most provoked invasion in history. Then October 7th hits, and Palestine is suddenly at the center of history again, which was part of the purpose of the October 7th attack. The West and the most undemocratic countries on the planet the Gulf monarchies wanted to normalize with Israel and put the Palestinians in the dustbin of history. October 7th shattered that, but it put another heavy burden on our backs, those of us in alternative media, which was to counter the mainstream media manufacturing consent for what has become the Holocaust of our time. And we are still living through a Holocaust over a year later. And I knew it would happen. All of us knew who dealt with Israel in the past. Israel's part of its national culture is to produce what they call hasbara. That's the Hebrew word for explanation. And it basically means propaganda. And all of its citizens are told, be ambassadors, learn hasbara. So as soon as October 7th happened, Israel commenced with the hasbara, pipelined through its assets in US media, arch Zionists like Jake Tapper, Dana Bash, former AIPAC researcher Wolf Blitzer, and they pumped out some of the most cynical propaganda I've ever seen about 40 beheaded babies, about a baby being cut from a woman's fetus, and then about the mass rape by Hamas on October 7th, for which there was no forensic evidence, no survivor testimony, and it was really just left up to us in alternative media. And I would recognize, Mondo Weiss, Electronic Intifada, for doing so much good work on this, to hit back and actually successfully cause a scandal at the New York Times, an internal scandal, when they started to try to push this atrocity propaganda, specifically around sexual assault. They actually had to take down their podcast that was supposed to hype up this front page article and then make the case that it deserved a Pulitzer Prize. One of the co-authors has been fired. They're just mired in scandal at the New York Times. Every component of that piece, Screams Before Silence, has been dismantled by alternative media. And I think so many people in the public who hadn't paid attention to what we were saying on Syria, which, by the way, the whole PSYOP was about delivering Syria to the West and Israel, who hadn't paid attention to what we were saying on Ukraine because they were inclined to hate Russia for whatever reason. It's conservative, it's anti-gay, for whatever reason. So many people started to finally see it, that the entire corporate media was not just fundamentally incapable of telling the truth, but was actually of a part with a system of genocide, a system of ethnic cleansing, that it was, they are stenographers for the perpetrators of a Holocaust. And so that's kind of where we've wound up today, where just the public, so many different sectors of the public, and we get them in our chat at the Grayzone, and it's just people from all over the world, mostly the United States and the UK, the English-speaking world, from so many different perspectives and so many different backgrounds, who are just fed up with the empire of lies, and they've turned to us, and they're turning to so many, Black Agenda Report, everyone on this panel. And history is everything we've been talking about since the Obama era. It's not only been proven, we've been proven correct. We've been proven correct about the OPCW deception, about all the chemical attacks. We've been proven correct about Russiagate. It's all gotten to the point where we are now, as Scott is pointing out again and again, on the precipice of nuclear war, nuclear extermination. And we are in World War III. Look at what's happening in Syria. The overrunning of Syria by highly organized, well-armed, Al-Qaeda-aligned bandits with the backing of NATO in the Turkish government, and from the south, criminal mafias, which have just taken over Daraa. None of this would have been possible without Ukraine, because it was Ukraine that forced Russians to redirect a lot of their air power that was at the Hmeimim air base to the Ukrainian front. And it wouldn't have been possible without the Israeli blitzkrieg on Lebanon, which weakened Hezbollah, which had been defending Syrian territory. So this is not just a Syrian civil war. This is World War III already. And, those of us in the media who just wanted to tell the truth, we've been forced into this space called the alternative media or independent media. But I think the rest of the people who have been paying attention in our societies, who want truth, who want peace, are along with us for the ride. And so what do we do? Well, all we can do in the media is political education, which I think builds a healthier culture. And so I just wake up every morning. I normally wouldn't wake up in the morning, but I have a kid now, so I have to take her to school. I like to be, creeping while everyone's sleeping. But I wake up in the morning and I just think maybe this won't work. Maybe Congress won't listen. They probably won't. But I'm just going to be the biggest bastard I can be today. And so should you.
Okay. Well, thank you.